We are ahead of target through September. For salary savings, we budgeted 6 million. We've taken 4.9 million so far. Gas, oil, and lubricants are under target. Vehicle repairs are over target. Yes.
I just got a text. People on Zoom can't hear it. I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so vehicle repairs, some of that will be covered by insurance proceeds, and then healthcare is over target by 1.5 million. We have some rebates that will take that down a little bit. We think probably by the end of the year, we'll be okay with contributions as well. But right now, 1.5, because we've had some very high dollar claims this year. Okay.
Hey, the roads maybe over repairs would be side.
Should working. Yeah. Should work now. Oh. Okay, revenues for general fund. As you can see, I know that the picture is kind of obscuring that a little bit, but we are over budget in revenues in all of our revenue categories, with the exception of rents and concessions. And I'll just let that sit for a minute so you can look at it. Sure. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Sure. It's not, because it's not in the general fund. That's enterprise. We'll get to that next. Okay.
That'll get next week, but that'll be a big plan.
Rents and concessions, it's really a timing issue and how we have the targets set, but we don't foresee a problem with rents and concessions. Permit fees had a slow start to the year, but we're tracking over target now. Charleston County local option sales tax is slightly over target, but we have noticed over the past 4 months that we've been under our monthly targets by about 2%. So we'll budget conservatively in 2024. And then Berkeley County local option sales tax is tracking well above target. There you go. Sure.
What would derail us between now and the end of the year being off target? Is there anything that you would foresee?
I don't, in which category? Just any
No,
of them?
our revenues are good.
Mhm.
And our expenditures are pretty good as well. So we're over target. Is there something that is lurking out there that you foresee in your crystal ball that says,
Not by the end of the year, obviously if we had a
yeah, I mean,
very impactful storm, which hopefully we're past now.
aside that, there's nothing
Another
that,
pandemic.
Yeah.
Something like that.
things really out of our control.
Yes.
But aside from that, I mean, if this thing just, everything should trend consistently between now and December 31st. Okay.
Enterprise funds, there's your parking revenue. So all of the enterprise funds are performing better than we expected. You see parking there is doing well.
I'll bite my tongue.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I know what he's gonna
Mhm.
say, but I'm not.
We have to, we need to. get
I know
through
what
all of the
Councilman
slides,
Seekings was gonna
which
say,
may
but I
confuse
guess,
him.
could I ask, what we budgeted $232,000 loss. We have $6.3 million in revenue. Well,
Mhm.
why did we budget losing money?
So
on
some of the losses due to some of the larger projects that we have, because in those numbers, we're not including transfers in or transfers out. So it's true actual revenues and expenses. So the reason why it looks like that is because the transfers in aren't included for the projects that we have, like the garage repairs and things like that. That
Okay.
makes sense.
All right.
I mean, what that tells me is people are parking, and had we raised parking fees, we could have avoided a property tax. Just
Stormwater fund. Stormwater revenues are tracking slightly under target due to, we had a delayed start in the $1 fee increase, but they're leveling out, and our other permits and fees are tracking slightly over target. So we expect that we'll be fine by the end of the year. Expenditures are all under target, both in personnel and operations. So they both correlate with each other. Tourism. Right now, we are tracking over target for municipal accommodations tax and hospitality fees. State aid tax is not performing as well as we expected.
why is that?
I think that, well, there's just less hotel stays right now. We're noticing that with the reports from the CBB. But I think we're just leveling back out. I don't know that it indicates anything in the economy necessarily. We are watching that, and we will be conservative for next year. But, you know, we had such an influx of tourism after COVID that I think now that things are just getting back to normal. It's kind of what we see, because we don't see a huge decline, but we are on top of it. Municipal accommodations, they've been slightly under target for the past 2 months, but we're still projecting to exceed budget by the end of the year. State accommodations is 6.2% under target. We've not received the third quarter. They're very late, and when they seem to get later and later. The state does when they give us the check. So we don't have that yet. Or actually it might have come today. We haven't had a chance to really analyze it yet. But we will, we are projecting that our revenues will be under target or under budget by the end of the year. And hospitality fees are forming above targets. There's no sign of decline in hospitality fees at all.
No.
Okay, that's just a graph of all our major revenues. You can see the light blue line is 2019, the orange is 2020. 2021, you can just see where we are. Solid blue line is 2023 actual.
What is the dotted yellow line underneath the blue line?
That is 2022 actual.
Okay. Wow.
No kidding.
So with revenues tracking above target and expenditures tracking below, we certainly expect to have a surplus at the end of the year. Business license revenue continues to track above target and stay strong. Interest income is above target. So our franchise fees and value of a mill is currently 2 million. That is up from 1.7 in 2023. So, or 2022, sorry. So looking at our 2024 preliminary, this is very estimates at this point. General fund and enterprise funds, this is where we look, what we look like for revenues. As you can see, we're projecting our revenues to be about $13 million higher than 2023 and 8.3 for enterprise funds. Any questions on that?
How do you calculate that? You just sort of take what you've seen over the last 3 or 4 years and sort of build that in as a multiplier?
Yeah, so we're going to go through some of our assumptions.
Thank you.
It says-
I'm a plant. Let me tell you something.
You paid big dollars to be a plant in here.
Where's that crystal ball?
So property taxes, our operating millage is 8.3. We're projecting 3% for vehicles and 3% for real property growth. Largest impact to our revenue is the King Street Gateway TIF revenues coming back into the general fund. So this is the last year for the King Street Gateway TIF. We will see those revenues in 2024. And we are projecting the same tax credit factor as we had for 23, which is 0.00092. And that will be the loss credited back. Berkeley County, we're projecting 5% for vehicles and 6% for all other real property. Tax credit factor is 0.00593, which is increased from last year, which was. Yes,
I need to go back, but the revenue for the King Street tip,
Mhm.
can you ballpark how much money that generated over the years?
The whole TIF or what? I have it. I don't have the number in my head,
Uh-huh.
but I can give you what it generated.
I think it'd be beneficial to all of us.
I can tell you what we're projecting it will bring back to the general fund for 2024, which is $6 to $7 million.
Okay, thank you. And that tip's been around how many years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 30 years.
Been around longer than you.
24 years.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanna,
We extended it.
Oh, right.
right, I remember that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
29 years
Wow.
So,
holding.
And that's where we got some of the money, when we got the grant from the STIP to finish, to get the 45 million to finish the spring fish spraying drainage.
right.
project.
And all of phase 5 is TIF funds.
TIF money,
Mhm.
okay. Thank you very much.
Local option sales tax for Charleston County, we budgeted 28.3 for 2023. We're projecting 29.3. We are projecting 29.4, which I know it doesn't seem like it's a huge jump from last year, what we project for the end of year. However, we've noticed that revenue has declined. We haven't been meeting targets for the last 4 months, so we're being very conservative in our projection. Berkeley County, we budgeted 2.9, almost 3 million. We're projecting almost 3.4. We're budgeting 3.8 for next year. Berkeley County's local option sales tax has stayed strong.
Well, that's important because as you know, the credit is not equal between those who live in Berkeley County and those who live in the city of Charleston County.
Yeah.
And
So we were actually able to increase the tax credit for Berkeley County this year.
that's good.
Mhm.
I'm giving him 100% credit for now, until 2024. There you go.
Actually, business licenses, we budgeted 44.5. You know, we have the 2% that goes automatically to the drainage fund, so it's 43.6. We're projecting 47.8. Like I said, business licenses continues to remain very strong. Net for this year projection 46.9 and 49.8 is what we're projecting for 2024. Net of the drainage fund transfer, it would be 47.8 million. Any questions? Franchise fees,
Can you go back just for 1 sec,
sure.
please? Okay.
Good.
Yeah, I got it.
Franchise
Thank
fees, I don't know if some of you remember that kind of flatlined on us for a little while for our electric and gas anyway. And now we're seeing increases in franchise fees again. So we're increasing the amount that we're budgeting for next year by a little bit. However, cable TV franchise fees are decreasing. So we're being a little bit more conservative in that estimate for 2024.
That's going to continue, right?
It will,
Yeah.
yes,
More and more people getting off the cable.
that's right. Any questions on that?
So we're in the telephone.
Huh?
Didn't we used to, what, we never used to get anything from AT&T?
No.
Okay.
Building permits, 2.4, we budgeted for permits and plan review 1.6. We're projecting 2.6 and 1.9 and budgeting 1.4 and 1.6. And that's because building permits was very slow beginning in the year, and we kind of caught up and they started to get back on track. We noticed in June there were some large projects that came through, which we think is probably what's escalating it a little bit. So we just want to remain conservative in that number for 2024. Any questions? Parking fund. We are budgeting, we budgeted 22.5 for garages, parking meters 3.2, parking violations 2.8. That's what we're projecting for your estimate for 2023. So we're increasing garages and lots 25.5. That includes the increased rates for lost ticket fees and hotel rates.
Where did we leave that conversation about looking at other increased rates? We're going to talk about that during this budget cycle.
We have not talked about that yet.
I know we haven't done it through
Mhm.
ad hoc, but is that somewhere in the back of y'all's mind that we're going to have a conversation about that during this budgeting cycle?
We can, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Parking meters,
So,
2.9.
Mike, if I remember, we tabled it because the hotels wanted to wait, right?
We did.
That, yes, because we were trying to go July 1st for that rate increase, but they wanted us to wait, so it'll start January 1st
Okay.
instead.
Thank you. I now remember that.
Tourism revenues. State accommodations, we budgeted 12, we're projecting only 10.9 million to probably come in this year. So we're conservatively budgeting 10.9 for 2024. Municipal, that's 2% tax collected by hotels. Our ordinance stipulates that 1% goes towards capital projects, the other 1% goes towards property tax relief. We budgeted 11 million. We're projecting about 11.6 million for 2023. And because we've seen that we're not meeting targets the last couple of months, we're being conservative with that number as well. Yes.
I have a question. Do we track the tax that's generated from STRs versus traditional hotels to sort of see which of those sectors may be lagging behind the others?
So when we get the information from the county and the state, they don't break that information out.
Huh.
And it would take a lot of time to kind of sort through all of that.
The reason I ask is because there's been a lot written about how Airbnb and things of that nature is starting to kind of lag a little bit. And I think that would be good information to know, especially as we embark on some potential zoning changes or discussions around this most controversial of use.
Well, it brings up a good point, but we probably have the most restrictive laws in the country on STRs, so we're not. Yeah. What? Most all of us, but I'm assuming that educated guess that the bulk of that money is from hotels as opposed to the
Mhm.
STRs.
That's right.
Yeah.
We did talk we were in talks with the county to see if we could have a better way of tracking that as well. And talking about software and things like that to help us do that.
Oh, thank you. Do you have it might be coming in a slide, but what capital projects were utilized with that money?
I don't have it in this slide, but we'll be bringing those budgets
Okay,
for you all to approve.
I just want to also on the distinction. The distinction between STRs and hotels, whether we couldn't pull that from the business license information rather than from the accommodation tax, just so we'd be able to track it. Do we distinguish in the business license who's a STR and who's a hotel?
I have to ask Joshua,
Yeah.
but I would imagine so, yes. I have to verify to make sure.
Yeah.
But then it's reconciling it between what we get from the county and the state, which tends to be a
Right.
little bit difficult, but
Right.
I'll ask him that question just to make sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Tourism ticket fees, we've seen somewhat of a decline in those as well, so we're staying conservative to what our year-end projection is for 2023. And just so you know, all of that gets transferred into the general fund for the tourism division. Hospitality fees, we budgeted 23.5, we're projecting 25.6 by the end of the year. We're budgeting $27.4 million for 2024.
I hate to go back. Could you go back to tourism ticket,
Mhm.
please? How do we generate that? I mean, that comes from what?
It's the tours, the carriage tours and the walking tours, that's those fees associated with those fees.
Okay. So Councilman Appel, having a new body of law that allowed us to institute fees. We
Act
get
236.
right. I mean, we have 8 million tourists a year? So where does that factor in going forward with the flexibility now that some cities like ourselves have? I know we often talk about how we can expand Act 236.
Yep.
To our advantage. You have any input on this? I'm picking your brains.
You know, we had this discussion earlier this year. There was discussion of a tourism management fee. We ended up going in a different direction through tweaking some of our business license formulas. I think,
Yeah, that will come up.
man, we're forecasting, we're
Yeah.
vibing today.
Yeah.
We're on the same page. So I think we'll see some slides about this, but there's good news on the way.
And then also, this is one of the fees that we're looking at with livability. Mhm. Mayor, did you have anything? Everybody, any other questions? Sure. Good on hospitality fees? Okay. Expenditures, base budget includes everything that, this is just base right now. From the department's 2023 budgets, including any one-time initiatives or expenditures that they asked for, includes contract price increases for contracted services. And then the current draft budget includes 250 million in expenditures and transfers out for the general fund and almost 35 million for the enterprise funds. But that does not include all of the additional requests that they asked for. Yeah, so that's what the base budget looks like right now. 285 million just in that first column. Biggest changes as it into non-departmental, but that's due to the ARPA funds because we're not budgeting any ARPA funds or the expenses because most of that, we just don't have any expenses to use ARPA funds because it's all been allocated. So that's the biggest decrease there. And then also fire and police, but that's mostly due to the pay plan adjustments that we had. And fire also had the 15 new firefighters for the station on Johns Island. We were only budgeted half a year for them in 2023. So that includes the full budget, a full year's budget for next year. Mine is pay plan adjustment and then the regime fee for the repairs needed at Waterfront Park Gallery. Public service is all the pay plan adjustment. And then most of the increases that you see in the departments are due to the pay plan adjustment that we did last year. Any questions on that? That's just kind of a pie chart of what all the departments look like. So you can kind of see police and fire, public service and parks have the biggest majority of the budget. Sorry. Sorry, was everybody else? I'm sorry. Good to go? Okay. So base budget right now with the revenues that we're projecting, we are at a $19.3 million surplus. That's just base budget. 2024, just base budget, what comes forward naturally from each of the departments. Okay. Total additional requests from the departments was 22.5 million. 21.7 of that from the general fund and 823,000 from enterprise funds. There was 1.8 million that we considered mandatory life safety that will automatically put into the budget. And all of those were general fund expenditures, nothing in enterprise funds. Of the 22.5 million, we are recommending 7.8 million or almost 7.8 million. With the 1.8 that is a total of 12.6 million that we were recommending be included in 2024's budget. 1.3 of that might be, we might be able to fund with other sources. Questions? So we'll go to the cost of living. I don't know if you remember all the discussion that we had last year about pay plan adjustments. And what was recommended for us to be the top paying municipality in the state was a 20% increase, which we couldn't do budget wise. So we talked about doing that over a 2-year period. So this would kind of get us to that 20%, what we're recommending. Last year, if you remember, we increased police and fire 12%. That was a 3% pay plan adjustment and a 9% cost of living. For non-sworn, we did 4.33% pay plan and 9% cost of living. Yes.
Is there a way we can, I mean, I know it's going to be a negligible amount, but can we see some numbers that take hour increase out of that? The city council's increase?
Yes, it would be minimal.
I mean, I know,
Yeah.
but
You
I
can do
mean,
that.
it went up 9% last year. I mean,
Understood. So in order to get us to that 20%, we would need to do a 5.88% increase this year. So we looked at the CPI for our region, which is around 4.2% really in September. Main increases are shelter, food, and electricity, and city average, US city average was 3.7%. What we're recommending is to do a COLA in line with the CPI, which would be a 4% increase. Our competitor, that would bring our minimum wage to $17.68, and that's what our competitors' wages are at right now, 17.7 and 17.78. However, Mount Pleasant's on a 37.5 hour work week, so their wages are a little inflated. We are planning to go to a 37.5 hour work week next year. So with the change, minimum wage would be $18.86. The total cost of that is 6.27 million. Is there questions on that? So it kind of with our new ERP system too, we kind of need a standard. Right now, it's kind of all over the place what everybody does. We're trying to have a standard work week and work day. So it really it's really about lunches is really what it is. So that they would incorporate a half an hour lunch that everybody would get in 37.5 hours. And it's just an easier way to make sure that everybody is being treated the same. That makes sense. You're still
We
working.
could probably have a separate a workshop just on this one thing. And it's taken a lot of discussion from human resources and budget and finance. And the bottom line is going to our new much improved software system for payroll, which we've been needing to do for quite some time. We had to make a decision to go one way or the other, so to speak. And this seemed to be the best choice. At the end of the day, you know, the money's the same. We're getting everybody on the same page, and we're going to be able to really be more efficient with the payroll system once the new system's up and running.
And a lot of our hourly employees are doing this already. So we just need to kind of standardize that. So if you work in 8 to 4, then you would get a half an hour lunch. That's 7.5 hours. Or if you want to take an hour lunch, and you would work 8:30 to 5:30 or 5, that would be 8.5 hours, and you take an hour lunch that way, as long as you're working 7.5 hours that day. Does that make sense?
Are we rolling off the paper timesheets now?
Not yet, not until the system. So the first payroll that we will use the new system is September 14th, 2024. And that's when we'll start.
Off the paper?
Yes.
Off all that?
And go live for the rest of the system is October 1st.
Okay.
So excuse my question if it's not relevant, but let's say environmental services, you know, our hourly employees, I mean, they work 4/10s.
So
Are
there's
they
this-
getting overtime after 37.5? I mean,
No,
how
so
are you?
they work 4 days, so their work day is a little bit more. It'd be I think it's 9.33 or something like that. I can't remember exact number, but it's they would work a longer work day than those working 5 days a week.
Mhm.
So it all
Okay.
evens out.
But have departments felt like this is what they want? Just, again, this is probably for a whole nother human resources committee meeting, but is this what they want?
We've talked to most of the departments and they're, you know, I think they're on board with it. It's been kind of a hard concept to grasp a little bit, but so far we're okay. Go ahead.
You did it, you know, based on 4% COLA, but based on what we said last year, and obviously we're now into the second year, we're going to try to do the 20% average over 2 years. What would it be if you went back to the 5 point, whatever?
So The rest of it, we're considering, we're considering a pay plan adjustment for the 1.88%, and then that would equal the 5.88. So,
So the difference is a 7.7 million versus
right.
6 point whatever.
So doing that on the pay plan versus a COLA is 1.44 million. Total cost is 7.7. And that would get us the full 5.88.
That makes sense to me.
I think so, yeah. If that sounds good to everyone. So bottom line, are we at a surplus or a deficit? Right now with the general fund, when you include the COLA, which is 7.4 million, the mandatory 1.8, and then the 10.3 that we're recommending, we're at a 12.9 million deficit in the general fund. And then with enterprise funds, we're at 11.9 million surplus. So our deficit is only $996,000 right now. Mhm. So we need about 997,000 to balance, because we're reviewing building inspections, fire marshals, and also I forgot about the livability fees. That will add a little bit of revenue to the budget. And then business license fees. I'm sorry, Councilman O'Shea, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So that less than $1 million, that include if we went to the full 1.8% increase on the budget, on the pay?
Mhm.
And if you didn't do that, then how close to zero would you be?
Well, we'd be way above zero.
Okay.
Mhm. We'd have a
That's less than $1
surplus,
million.
a 7.7, well, about a $7 million surplus. So business license fees, we're reviewing them specific to accommodations enterprises. And it would be creating a new business license subclassification for those entities to offset the additional resources required to provide services to them. And we're contracted with Municap right now. They're looking at it because the state requires us to do this review to ensure that increasing the fees is can be substantiated. And they're expecting this to be done by the end of the year. So that is one other thing that we're looking at for business licenses. Mhm. Mhm. It would. We've got to look at the rate structure a little bit, but it's probably $1 to $2 million. Depending on what we do.
So different businesses have different rate classifications. And what we discovered in our effort to try to make sure that the tourist industry pays more of its fair share to offset police, fire, other government services, we had started down a path of a tourism management fee, which is a whole different discussion we got to talk about outside of council. But we ended up looking at the business license classification rates, and we determined that City of Charleston was charging a lower rate on hotels than Myrtle Beach was in several other jurisdictions. And by making just a small tweak to the rate classification, we could generate potentially millions of additional dollars for the city without imposing a very significant impact to the hotels and other different accommodations purveyors in the city. So, this is really strong in terms of legal support when it comes to the business license tweaks. We're not having to rely on Act 236 for this. We're catching up, exactly. And I think that a simple way to explain this is why should the city of Charleston not have the same business license rates as Myrtle Beach? So I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I was wondering, Amy, as part of this Municap code, Municap analysis, are they being asked to look at just our proposed increase, or are they looking at tourism's impact on the city at large to kind of provide us a ceiling?
They're looking at
that.
the impact.
Okay, so once we get this information back, we can look at whether or not to turn the dial, maybe an additional amount next year. So we're making some good strides, I think, in making sure that the tourist industry pays its fair share, because, you know, every year I've been on council, we've had to look at property tax increases. Now, a lot of that is due to COVID, and there were some really significant impacts. But I think as we begin to move forward long term, the way we offset that continual pressure to raise property taxes on our constituents is we got to get creative on all revenue fronts, whether it's parking, whether it's finding ways to make sure that, you know, the tourist industry that is so significant, you know, pays its fair share. I think that's what this is all about. So I'm glad to see y'all do this for this year. That's really great to see.
So next steps, like we said, we have some options for that deficit that we're looking at. And we've also sent all of our recommendations, what we were recommending back to the departments to get their buy-in, make sure that they're in agreement with that. So we're still working with the departments on that. And then why is it different, right? Because, you know, every year we've had quite large deficits. Hospitality fee transfer, we did this last year where we looked at a calculation to determine how much we could transfer into the general fund based on the impacts that tourism has on our departments. Last year was like 12-point-something%. This year is 13.43% of budgeted eligible general fund expenditures that we could transfer. The general fund, the base budget is 250 million. 13.43% of that would be 33.6 million. And then we looked at all of our departments to see specific expenditures that would qualify. And we came back with 26.3 million that we felt was justifiable just from the general fund. Projected hospitality fees, 27.4. You know, in the hospitality fee budget, we always have those things that we have to pay for, like agreements and things like that. So what we could transfer is 14.9 million. So that is the transfer that we have currently in the budget now from hospitality fee fund. And obviously this takes a lot of pressure off the general fund and lets us fund more requests.
If we did not do that,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm in favor of doing it, but if we did not do that, what kind of impact would that have on property taxes if we didn't use tourism
Well,
dollars?
it doesn't necessarily have to have an impact unless you want to do a millage increase. You just have to cut back on your expenditures to balance the budget.
So we would have to cut how much? 14 million?
14.9 million.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then obviously the King Street Gateway TIF is coming into the general fund, which that helps. That's $6 to $7 million. And so really with the growth, just our growth in revenues, our property tax revenue from the King Street Gateway TIF, and then the hospitality fee transfer, it really puts us in a comfortable position for 2024. And that's really all I had. Any questions?
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you. Lots, but I'll just, if you go back, you said there was a scenario that's probably looking like what you're going to propose. So a couple slides back. Yeah, maybe some, yes. Yeah. So if we do that, 7.7, we need to come up with 7.7.
It's already in that, but
Or
in the
we, or,
budget.
okay.
If you see the second column, the COLA pay plan adjustment, the 7.4 million,
Okay.
that's already included in that 900.
So I mean, basically my question is property tax wise,
There's no.
we
plan
wouldn't need
for-
a millage.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
So Amy, the slide back again about the hospitality calculation. Even before you went to this new way of calculating it, we were utilizing a kind of a standard 5% or some other figure, isn't that right?
We would look at what we would normally, what we knew, like the parking enforcement officers downtown, the entertainment district police officers and things like that, and other things that we knew. I don't know that it was on a percentage necessarily, but we would look at it that way instead of looking at it citywide.
Right, I
Mhm.
got you. So I
because
guess my
it
point,
does
would-
impact all the departments in some way.
and what was the next slide? Where you come up with that, 14.9 million. Councilmember Waring, it, I was just gonna make the point that, even before this different way of calculating it, we were using some pretty significant figure. It might have only been half of that, but there was some millions of dollars that we were transferring, doing it the old way. Yeah. Just for everybody's knowledge. Yeah, that's right.
What's really amazing about the numbers and the hospitality, if you go back to that, is that we increase our population with tourism every single day, almost 14%. And I know we don't want to be too geographic about this, but if you think about the peninsula, it almost doubles the population on the peninsula every single day, 365 days a year. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, those numbers
It
every
is.
day. And
And
I
you
mean,
can
I
feel
love the
it.
way you calculate that because I think it's fair. I mean, we should
Mm-hmm.
be able to put money in based on where the tourists are and where they're coming from, where they're going.
I think that's right.
I mean, it's a staggering number.
Mhm. All right.
I mean, I'm just curious, how many policemen we have in the historic district at a given time?
Ugh. We could have that
So,
team two.
Team
seven.
9, team
So-
1.
Maybe 100, somewhere up in there.
Not quite. I don't think that many.
I don't think it's 100, but we.
So
we can
between
check.
80 and not 100. So we didn't have 8 million tourists.
Well,
So they still need the basis on that.
I do want to share with y'all that the Explorer Charleston is doing some sampling and analysis. And even when they say there's 7.68 million visitors coming, that's the region. And we're counting them all like they're coming downtown. And there are folks that go to Folly Beach that never come downtown. They're part of that 7.68 million. That's the way Helen described it to me. And they're trying to come up with that reasonable percentage. It's a high number. It's probably over 70% that do come downtown, but it's not the whole number, just to let you know.
Well, I mean, my argument has always been out there in the public, people coming to this region at some point in their travels, even if it's just for a couple of hours, they do come to the peninsula because it's the attraction, right? So, I mean, if you're going to Folly Beach, if you're going to the Isle of Palms on a Friday or Saturday night on Upper King Street, you got bands coming in from all those places, bringing people just for those few hours. So the percentage of people who come to this region that touch the peninsula during their average now 92-hour stay is a very high
It's
number.
very high,
It's way over 70.
but it's not 100%.
No, it's not 100%.
Yeah.
I get that.
Councilmember Parker.
One other question, and y'all bear with me, y'all have been here for a couple of these. So.
Thank you
so-
for reminding us of that, by the way. We very much appreciate that.
Y'all have, so, I know we talked about last year during budget season, it was, we were going to talk about local option sales tax and how, we were raising the millage, but we might not have to if we receive so much tax and everything. And I thought it was discussed that we would have some type of mid-year review or something. So where did it end? I mean, where do we end last year with the millage increase? I mean, it happened. Everyone will see that on their tax bill.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing changed. I mean, we
no,
had
it's-
to,
This the same.
okay,
Yes.
because I know those discussions happened. I'm not, I know they happened, that it could potentially not be raised. We may not need the extra millage, but we did need it.
Mhm.
Yes.
We're not done with 23 yet, but because that's a 23.
Yeah.
It's a taxes, not 22's taxes. So,
Right.
Yeah.
But so, yes, we did need it. Probably.
I mean, we're going to have a surplus. Yes. We will
Okay.
have a surplus at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just got my tax bill in the mail yesterday, and my total payment was down a little bit because the credit was up from the year before. But I tell you what shocked me is my homeowner's insurance in the last couple of years has gone up appreciably. The taxes have stayed flat.
That's because most of the home insurers have pulled out. I mean,
Yeah.
you can only, the market, there's only a couple, three people actually selling insurance to you right now.
So the prices are.
Way up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Have
I
y'all
did
seen
too.
that?
AIG
Councilmember
got
Gray?
'em.
Thank you. Could you send us a copy of these?
Okay,
And
yep.
with the budget surplus from 2023, then that gets carried forward into the budget for 2024. Is that so?
Well, we'll close out 2023 and though if whatever the surplus is, we typically will use that for our capital projects, but we also have to maintain our 20% unassigned fund
Okay.
balance as well.
All
And
right.
with our budgets growing every year, that number increases every year as well.
Okay,
So we do that first and then we look at projects.
got it. All right, thank you.
Mhm. All right, any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming
Thank you.
early.
Super
and,
interesting.
Very interesting. Will we send out the slide deck to everybody? So if you have a little more time to dig in and ask questions, of course, we're open for business. Thank you, Amy.
Sure.
All right, so 424. Any other business to